we gotta talk about Oluwabidemi Joseph. Hey, Oluwa Joseph Bidemi. If you don't know who I'm referring to, that is Biden. If you're Nigerian, this is the name that we have dubbed President Biden. He is no longer President Biden. His name is Oluwa Joseph Bidemi. That's his new name. That's his name. That's what I call him. If you've never heard the podcast before, that is the name that we have given this man. Because the name Joseph Biden, it's okay. It's okay. It's an okay name. But it's not the kind of name that you give to somebody that is entering into proper position. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? All my Naija people say, hey, we'll talk about Naija this thing later on in the podcast. There's something else we got to talk about at the end of the podcast. But anyway, he revealed his infrastructure plan to spend $4 trillion. My guy is swiping that presidential black card like it ain't no man's business. You have to also remember, we just had that stimulus package where he doled out $1.9 trillion. And my guy's like, no. I'm not done yet. We spending another $4 trillion. We putting another $4 trillion into this economy because I am not finished yet. I am going to be one of the presidents that you shall remember in history. He didn't say all of that. I'm putting that in his mouth. But basically, that's part of why he's doing all of this stuff. But anyway, he had a speech in Pittsburgh. When you guys will be hearing it, it's going to be yesterday. When I'm listening to it, it was today, where he revealed all the different parts of the plan. Major focus of the plan was slowing down the climate crisis. I don't know why I can't talk right now. And also to reduce economic inequality. And the plan is going to be in 2 stages. The first part of the plan is just what I mentioned, and the second part is going to be on health and education. Now down to the details of the plan. As a matter of fact, if you are watching this on YouTube, I'm going to share an article on my screen so you guys, if my computer would work, so you guys can see exactly what I'm talking about. So we're going to start sharing it. So in the new plan, because I also need my notes, so I'm going to put this down there. In the new plan, it's going to institute a few things. It's going to be broken down into 4 buckets: transportation, home, care, and research and development. He wants to spend $621 billion for standard physical infrastructure such as road, bridges, homes, public transportations, and those kind of things. However, the reason why the number is so high is he wants to include a lot of addition into electric vehicles. He wants electric vehicles to become more prominent, especially for government vehicles. And he also wants to build out a fleet of electric charging stations. This is why, if you pay attention to the stock market, you've seen EV stocks kind of take off all of a sudden, is because of this proposal by Biden. The next thing that he wants to do is to have $100 billion for investing in internet broadband internet broadband access. I don't know what they were doing before, because really the guy Ajit Pai, I think is his name, that was over the FCC, which is the Federal Communications Commission. He came out and said some nonsense that they still believe that 21 megabytes download is still sufficient in this day and age. 21 meg, are you kidding me? Like, dog, we on Zoom calls all the time. We trying to watch YouTube when we're supposed to not be watching YouTube because we're supposed to be working. But we're doing all of this stuff, and you're trying to tell me that 21 megabytes is still sufficient? Dog, you must have lost your goddamn mind. Oh, sorry, But you must have lost your mind talking about 21 megabytes is still sufficient in this day and age. But anyway, he also wants to spend $100 billion to update the electric grids, especially after everything that just happened in Texas. Texas is not the only state that is behind on improving their grid. However, Texas has other issues, namely the fact that they're deregulated, which is a whole other discussion that we can have another day. The next thing is $213 billion to address economic equality by modernizing school buildings, such as to modernize school buildings and VA hospitals. In other words, basically, it's time for us to start paying attention to those who are marginalized and underserved in a lot of communities. In case you don't know how school gets their funding, it's all based on your tax code. It's all based on how much money in your tax bracket that you're bringing in is how much money and how well your school is going to be doing. So if you live in a good side of town, guess what? You're going to be getting a nice little education. If you don't live in a good side of town, you're going to probably have some old textbooks that need to be updated because they're way behind. So he's doing something about that, spending about $213 billion to update a lot of those things. The next one is something he likes to dub the care infrastructure, where he plans to spend $400 billion to expand access to home or community care for people with aging relatives or those with disabilities. I don't know if anybody has noticed, but we have a lot of old people that are getting a lot older because a lot of people are leaving the workforce because baby boomers, they're getting old. Really old, and they're leaving the workforce, and part of that is you have a lot of family members who don't have the money to be able to support that family member, and there's those kind of things they're trying to do something about. The next thing is he wants to spend $100 billion for workforce development targeted at low income and underserved communities. Low income and underserved communities, part of the world that basically has been ignored. Like if we go back to what I was saying about the schools, these are part of the things that we've just kind of like left them in the dust, and we're like, do whatever, we don't really care about you. But also you have to remember that we're moving into a new age. One of the things that people keep talking about is the reason some of the biggest industries in the United States is, and some of the biggest hirers of people to work, or employers, that's the better word, employers in the United States, is the service industry. And when I talk about service industries, I'm talking about restaurants. I'm talking about all the things that we tend to ignore, like cashiers at Walmart and cashiers and those kind of industries. Those are some of the highest employment industries. And right now we're going through a phase where that is being phased out, aided especially by the pandemic, where we've been talking about it for a while. A lot of those jobs are not coming back. So in order to help the development, because one thing you always have to remember when it comes to GDP, when it comes to economic growth, it's not down to just them spending money in the economy, it's productivity. Productivity is the way that an economy is able to grow faster and bigger and bigger and bigger. And an easy way for the government to be able to spur on productivity is to tool people with the right skills to be able to do the right kind of work. And so that's why he wants to spend $100 billion to start to redevelop and retool the workforce for the future, rather than what we have going on right now. So the question that everybody may have is, how is this going to play out? What is it going to look like in the future? This is being touted as an historic investment in the country on the level of the New Deal that FDR brought to life, which brought things like Social Securities and some of the safety net things that we have today, and helped the country come out of the Great Depression. FDR is one of Biden's, he said it multiple times, is one of Biden's heroes. So if he can be somewhere in line with FDR, Biden is going to be very happy. S&P Global Research, if you don't know who they are, they do a lot of research, especially on business, economy, and those kind of things. S&P Global Research predicts Biden's infrastructure plan will create 2.3 million jobs by 2024 and raise the per capita income by $2,400. Lawrence Baxter, director of the Global Financial Markets Center at Duke, compares Biden's proposed new program to New Deal initiatives like the Blue Ridge Parkway that created a battle unemployment following the Great Depression. We just talked about that a little bit. I'm terrible at reading. I don't know why I can't read right now. It is important to note that for as much as it seems like spending is going back to normal, the economy seems to be doing very well. That is not actually the case right now. According to the Census Bureau's latest household pulse survey, more than 9 million renters are behind on their rent payments and are at risk of being evicted, with around 11% of renters saying that they have no confidence that they will be able to pay next month's rent. This is by a study found by Axios. The Census Bureau also found that about 19.2% of U.S. adults are expecting a loss of employment income in the next 4 weeks, while 10.7% said they don't have enough to eat. So there's a lot going on in the economy that we may not be seeing in our own view because we're on YouTube and YouTube looks like everybody's making money on YouTube. That's not necessarily the case. There's still a lot of people who are struggling in this economy. And so your follow-up question may be, how are we gonna pay for all of this? How are we gonna pay for all this? That's $4 trillion. We already had $1.9 trillion, and before that we already spent like $5 trillion. What you mean? How are we gonna pay for all this stuff? It's simple. I'm glad you asked. The answer is taxes. Well, not for everybody, not increased taxes for everybody, but Biden intends to, as part of this infrastructure package, to increase corporate taxes from 21% back to 28% for at least the next 15 years. To incentivize businesses to keep their money in the States and continue business here, he is proposing a global minimum tax, which we talked about last week. So the other thing he's also proposing is to increase taxes on the wealthiest population of the United States, those who make more than $400,000 a year. And even the increase is just increasing it from 37% to 39.6%. From a macroeconomic perspective, we're breaking this thing down from every single angle, baby. We're breaking this thing down everywhere. From a macroeconomic perspective, there is fear that this will cause inflation to get out of control. However, some economics believe that we should not worry about that right now. Inflation fears is not something we should worry about because for the last 2 decades, we have been in a state of stagnation. If you don't know what stagnation is, it's basically where prices of goods and services are not going up and matching the rate of growth, or we're not growing that quickly. It's believed that if we can get back some inflation, we'll be able to grow at a 4% rate where we've been stagnating at about a 2% rate. Stagflation is not good because that's the reason why income has not been going up. If we don't have any inflation, income doesn't go up, you keep making the same money, you can't buy as much stuff, not good. So inflation, I just talked about that. Those same economists also believe that we will finally move away from monetary stimulus as our way to do much of helping and move more into fiscal stimulus, a more balanced approach, which will help meter out the gap that we've been seeing in the last 20 to 30 years of the K-shaped recovery that we've had over and over again. If we look at 2008, and then if we look right now in 2020, after the recessions that we had both times, it's been a K-shaped recovery where those on the lower end keep going lower and lower, and those on the high end keep making more and more and more and more money. So that's just a few things to note as far as this whole proposal. Where do I stand on it? I like it because I believe that infrastructure and finding new ways of developing out our society is key if we're going to try and find new ways of building more productivity, like I said earlier. So I like it. Will this whole thing get passed? It's unlikely to get passed as it is, mainly because there's a lot of Democrats that are like, yo, we need to finagle some more things in here. There's a lot of other stuff that we don't really want in here. And, you know, as everything comes down in politics, it's just about putting out some kind of nonsense narrative anyway. But anyway, that's all I got for that one. I hope you enjoyed that little snippet of the Rambling Mind podcast. If you want more of the Rambling Mind podcast, or if you want to listen to the whole episode that you just heard, go check it out on any podcast listening platform, whether that be Anchor, Spotify, Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, Breaker, Stitcher. I could go on, but you guys already know which podcast you love to use to listen to. So go check it out. Link down in the description as well. I'm gonna catch y'all later. Peace.